Welcome back to editing this landscape photo. In the first part of this, if you've not seen it, we basically went through our entire edit and looked at what we want to get from this, which is mostly to get a burnt out landscape of a more volcanic vibe. But we want to make this look really dramatic. And whilst our preset that we've put over the top of this has given us the edit, it's given us the color palette, the contrast, all of this, a lot of the work for the dramatic vibe, getting that atmosphere to the piece, is going to come from the masking side. And with landscapes, you're going to want to do a lot of masking, because in a piece, especially like this, there's so much going on, and you really want to make sure you catch a lot of light painting into this. So make sure the highlights are popping out, darken down some of the shadows areas. Depending on your skies, you're going to want to do a lot of sky fixes with masking as well. And the purpose here is really just to create an atmosphere to the piece. So let's dive back into our image and have a look at some masking. So here was the work that we've done so far. And if you've not seen part one, please do go back and watch that. Or if you're just interested in the masking side, stick around. But let's have a bit of fun with this then. So over onto the side panel, I'm going to go into my masking. Now, being aware of what I've got at the minute, I've got light casting across from the valley. So my light source is going to be coming from this direction here, which really means I'm going to want to brighten up this area. I'm also going to want to dehaze a bit here as well to create a bit more of a sort of atmospheric glow. I'm looking for atmospheric perception with this. But this sky's got a lot of interesting bits in it anyway, and we may come across a problem with doing some fixes to this in that the blue might poke through. So we may have to go back to our edit, adjust the blues. We're going to want to get the highlights on these valleys to come out a bit more, and we're going to want to darken down these areas here. A lot of these masks then are basically going to be achieving this by using a combination of the exposure, which is going to help us bring in the lights and the darks, shadows to enhance certain areas, dehaze to either make things dramatic or give us a bit more of an atmosphere, and the temperature slider as well, which is going to help us to warm up certain areas of the image. So that's mostly what we're going to be working with. Nothing too aggressive on the masking side. We could use curves instead. There's a whole range of tools you can, but for today, let's just keep it simple with things. So my first one to do is some kind of big strokes just to really get some light in the image. So I'm going to take a linear gradient from the bottom here, reduce the exposure and just reduce the contrast slightly on this. And that's just to straight away darken down this area here, coming across the image. Next, I want to make sure I'm getting my light source in. So I'm going to take a larger radial gradient over the top side here, make it a bit more of an oval shape and just angle into the valley a bit more. And I always like with the radial gradients try and follow my composition. And for this, we're just going to boost the exposure slightly. And we're also going to take away some of the dehaze as well. And that's going to help give us that glow you see coming across the image there. So if I turn these on and off, we've straight away already brought in just enhancing the light that's in it. Now, temperature changes are quite interesting to do when you've got the light source. So if we want to make sure we've got more of like a sunset vibe to this, I can raise my temperature up. And then that's going to give us a bit more of a sunset coming into here. I've got to be careful though not to catch too much on this side. So I'm going to use quite a big spread on this here. And yeah, just bring up that warmth a bit more onto this. I'm going to go into the minus here, and I'm just going to grab a brush. I'm going to grab quite a wide brush, and I'm just going to sweep across these rocks because I don't really want them to be caught by either the temperature or the light. So I'm just going to remove from that there. Good, so even that's just made a nice big difference to us. Now we really need to look at sorting out that sky that we've got going on. So I'm going to go down and select sky from this. That's given us a nice mask of the sky. It's a bit untidy, but don't worry about that. First thing I want to do here is just pull down my highlights a little bit further and just see what effect that's having, if anything decent. I think largely this is going to come from pulling down the dehaze, increasing the dehaze on that. That gives us more, you see here, of this dramatic cloudscape that's coming in. But we don't want to go too aggressive with it. So whilst I like what it's doing over here, I don't like what it's doing over here, because this just doesn't quite look right. This looks a lot nicer, but this doesn't, and the blue's just too dark here. So what we're going to do with this is right click on, and then we're going to go intersect mask with a linear gradient here. And then going to draw a linear gradient across like that. And what this is essentially doing is saying how much of this mask we've already got we want to apply to it. So I'm going to bring this back up to here so I get more of the dramatic side hitting on the clouds on this side, but I'm relatively leaving these clouds alone. So it feels a little bit more natural with it. I'm just going to reduce down, dehaze slightly there, just try and find the balance. So now if we toggle that on and off, you can see we've got a bit more interest coming in the clouds in the darker points over here, but we're not really touching it as much on this side. I'm then going to put one more radial gradient smaller in the valley here, and I'm just going to, it's doubling up basically on what we've already got. So I want this to be even more atmospheric down here, get that bit more of a glow in. That's going to help that sky bit here. And again, we're just going to increase the exposure slightly on this. I'll try putting a bit more warmth in. So that's helping just poke out this sky a little bit more. It's helping warm up this area of the valley where our sun's kind of coming down and hitting onto here. Next, we're going to go through with a brush and we're just going to start sort of dodging and burning different areas. So I'm going to take a highlights brush first of all. So I'm just going to boost my exposure up quite a bit, and I'm going to basically just paint across these mountains that we have here. So this was really where we brought the whites down, and I wanted to keep a bit more of it in. So I'm going to bring my whites up slightly here. Shadows and my contrast as well. And I'm just going to paint across these little parts in the valley. No, decided I didn't like that in that one area. I want this to be quite aggressive. We'll save that one for afterwards. Good, and then we're going to do the opposite, take a brush and we're going to decrease the exposure, decrease the contrast slightly, and we're just simply going to paint over some of these more darker areas that we've got. And I like to do quite broad stroked sort of shadows, as you see here, coming down into the valley. Just get anywhere where it looks a bit more like shadow based. I'm going to leave this and do a separate one on that because I want to be more aggressive on this first one. So just back up a bit there, just to really darken it down quite a bit. And then we'll take a second brush and we'll do a very similar thing, but just not as aggressive. I always start aggressive, and that's just so I can see kind of the effect it's having with like those mountains there. But I'm being very aware of the atmospheric perception as I go back into the mountains. I still want to make sure I don't have as much detail in those. So I'm just kind of sweeping across this area. I'll just do a gentle little sweep on that curved bit of the valley there as well. And then we'll back off on our exposure. Increase the black slightly. And it's very, very subtle movements, like just 1 point either side here works. And I'm just going to decrease my temperature slightly here, just to bring a little bit more coldness into the mountains where that blue is, and into the shadows. Because remember, this is what we did in part 1 with the color grading, where in the darker points we will put in our shadows some blues, highlights some oranges. So I'm kind of just replicating that here as well. So toggling those on and off, you can see we're now starting to get that dramatic vibe to the landscape. And really what we've done is enhance our light source, bring in some shadow lighting and things, and just make the sky look a little bit more dramatic. So really it's just enhancing what we've already got there. And this is something I would spend a lot more time on, going back and forth, just tweaking all the different areas. But for the sake of the video today, it's just show you the sort of masking I would do when it comes to the landscapes. So now's a good time to say, if you do like what you're seeing, please do like, subscribe. You can get all my presets down below, and there are a couple of free packs for you as well. Now I still feel like this is quite nice and bright here, but we're just missing some sort of broad rays or strokes coming in, or the God rays. So let's see if we can achieve that with the brush. So I'm just going to boost up the highlights there. I'm basically going to take from my light source and I'm just going to sweep across like that, across the valley, hitting those light areas. Now, not all of that is necessarily what we want in this, so then it's just getting a slight raise to it. And because it's more of like a light ray, again, just a little bit of a dehaze. Very, very subtle to it there. But if you can see where it's hitting some parts of the valley we don't want, so now we can come in, take our brush, and go the other way and just make sure over some of these darker areas, you know, it's not being affected as much there. We still want it to be quite nice in it, but it was really just to enhance the lighting that was already going on in the image. I didn't want it to affect everything. So it's just taking some broad strokes we can see there. We double check if it's hitting anything else on our mask that we don't really want it to. Potentially a little bit. Just go around the outlines of these shadows. So you can see this is a long game. You end up spending sometimes more time doing the masking side than you actually do on the edits when it comes to the landscapes. But that's looking good, and we will just slightly warm that up as well there. So I'm kind of just creating this warm glow coming across from the top. Now I can keep going and going on this, but essentially getting the idea here, and that we want to have some sky fixes going on. We can use our temperature changes to bring sort of the cools and the shadows, you know, the warms up in the highlights area. We want to make sure we got that atmospheric perception really accented out, so we're still getting, as you go into the distance of those mountains, they're not sharp, but it's about creating a mood. It's creating an atmosphere for it. So as we toggle this on and off, you can really see we've got more of a sunset vibe coming across onto this here now. What does need a bit more work on this is the sky area at the top, and I can see I'm still not happy with that blue right in the corner here. So this is where I would revisit my sort of saturation and luminance, and I would have a look at see what sort of fixes can I do here, you know, what don't I like about it. But quite honestly, it's more, I don't want that blue to be there at all. I don't like the shape of the clouds of it. So I may just completely saturate out all the blues from the image, because the problem with raising the luminance up and down here then is you might still get some harshness to the sky. Now by removing the blues, it just blends in with the sky a bit more. But personally, this is probably something I would then use the gen fill just to help with that little area there, or clone stamp somewhere else and just pull it in. But the gen fill is probably quicker and does a better job at this point. The final thing I want to do then is just a vignette. And now there are a couple of different ways I would do this on an image like this. I would either take a radial gradient, kind of angle it towards my composition, so towards my light source like that, and darken down. But the problem we might have here is this is really light up at the top, so you're still going to have something caught in it. So it might be worth, actually, we do use the vignette tool after all. And we bring in a dramatic kind of vignette, but with the highlights, we pull that up to full. So you can see in that top corner there, basically means that vignette's not going to affect our highlights. So I might just pull that up to full, feather that out. And that really, again, helps to create that nice dramatic vibe with the clouds up in the corner. But I'd probably then just revisit this we had on the exposure here. And I think it was down in the dehaze. Just back off that slightly. I like the dramatic vibe it's having, but it's just finding the right angle for it to hit at. It's interesting if we come down how we get this lovely kind of cloudscape coming in. I think there's more work to be done on these clouds at the top here, which is probably what I'm going to be spending the next part of this afternoon doing. But for the sake of the landscape videos and editing, we will stop there and save you from me going back and forth on any more changes with this, but just show you the struggle, the thinking when you are editing these landscape photos, the areas we want to in it, and this masking has really helped to create this atmosphere and this mood to the image. But yes, there's just a little bit more work I want to do with that sky up at the top there, and then probably just some last little dodge and burn-ins. But most likely what I would do at this point is just go back and forth between my masks and between my edit and just really balance things out. So I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful, and you've got some great shots to go away and edit on. If you do want to learn more, please do check out below my masterclass that I have, which will take you through a full Lightroom walkthrough, as well as a great workflow to be able to edit photos. If you like the style of this, remember my presets are down below. There's a couple of free packs as well you can grab, and I'll see you in the next one.